The celebration in Israel is not only a look to the future, but a reminder of the past and the struggle for independence and survival. Roger Sharp, more this evening on Israel.
The Holocaust, the kibbutz, both have a very meaningful imprint on the state of mind of Israel at 30. Rather than concentrate on a military parade of war machinery this anniversary night, we focus instead on the Kibbutz Pioneers. As an English journalist recently wrote, it is the kibbutz which represents what is brilliant and finest about Israel.
About a mile and a half southeast of us, we have the Valley of Elah, where David and Goliath had their famous battle.
He's Yehuda ben Horim, kibbutznik, patriot. Ben Horim means free man, and that's what Yehuda is and was. Julius Freeman, 9th and Avenue West, Flatbush, Brooklyn, USA, until 1939 when he and wife Tikva came here to the Negev. Yehuda, a co-founder of the kibbutz Kfar Menachem, desert made green.
At the same time, we're surrounded by Arab villages on all sides. The Arabs had been told that we came here to take away everything that they had, and they were resentful of our being here, and we expected to be wiped out. We expected them to come in on us any night, and we'd wake up the next morning and find ourselves dead.
Yehuda and Tikva lived through the fight for liberation and independence. They were there for the birth of a nation 30 years ago. They still represent the soul of the young country, what Israel is all about.
In 48, the local Arabs, during the War of Liberation, the local Arabs were given guns to use against us. Instead of using the guns against us, instead of trying to kill us, they came here at night with the guns and sold them to us. So that until the arms shipment from Czechoslovakia came, we were the main source of the British 303 rifles that the Haganah had.
Their greatest sacrifice came during the Six-Day War in 1967. 2 beloved sons died in combat on the very same day, June 6th. Yohanan, 22, a paratrooper killed by Egyptian gunfire in Sinai. 12 hours later, the oldest, Amram, 28, died leading a reconnaissance squad through Gaza.
And I was just thinking of the fact that how awful it was that my sons had to, and other sons had to use the knowledge of war and the use of guns against the Arabs, that they had to make use of it, knowing how they felt about war and that and their outlook altogether, and the terrible thing that they were faced with having to shoot, not knowing that they would be shot too. And this feeling haunts me to this day.
I reacted differently. My reaction was a more or less complete blackout, which lasted close to 8 months. I was going around like a zombie, most probably, because I reacted. I spoke to people. I tried to go back to work as quickly as possible, because sitting here and looking at the walls or looking at the pictures of the boys didn't do any good. But I just lived through whatever I was doing physically, and that lasted for a long time.
When Yehuda found there was no program for bereaved families in Israel, he started one, and 2 days a week leaves his poultry duties at the 2,000-acre kibbutz to help bereaved parents, widows, and children elsewhere. Yehuda and Tikva's youngest son, Baruch, is currently serving his 3-year military time, but because his brothers were killed, is not assigned to a combat unit. In all, 7 from the kibbutz have been lost in war, and in their memory, this cultural center is being built at Kfar Menachem, a magnificent dome structure created by Buckminster Fuller, under construction for several years now. Another $300,000 is needed for completion. Says Yehuda, Israel needs so many other things right now.
Be the cultural center for the southern part of the country, so that we'll be able to get the best of the arts available for us chicken farmers.
There are some 250 kibbutzes in Israel, each a special story. North of Haifa, Lakameh HaGhettoot, the ghetto fighter's house. A kibbutz and museum stand as a monument to what the Nazis did to the Jewish people in Europe. There is really no better place to visit on Israel's 30th anniversary. This kibbutz and museum were actually built by survivors of the camps and ghettos. They came from Poland and brought with them the deep conviction that created the Israeli spirit. Here, the Holocaust is not a soap opera television program, but a real experience, lived and remembered.
The idea of the museum in Poland, the reminders of the ghetto fighters in Warsaw and other ghettos and partisans, we wanted to build something in Israel in the memory of our friends who fell in the battle.
The trauma of the Holocaust is rooted deep in Israeli society, the preoccupation for security and survival. As Amos Alon wrote in Founders and Sons, it explains the fears and prejudices, passions, pains, prides that spin the plot of public life, the towering urge for self-reliance at all costs. Do you feel today the same need to have a museum such as this as you did when you first came to Israel?
It is important every year, more and more.
There is still fire and determination in Sarah Neshemeth and other Nazi survivors at Lakameh HaGhettoot. They are a bit bewildered by the despair and frustration often exhibited by the younger generation and are saddened when some of the young leave Israel to seek a better life elsewhere.
If I couldn't believe in the future of Israel, I didn't want to live. It is my answer. And I believe in the future. I believe it will come a time and our children and our grandchildren, they will live in peace. It must be.
To Yehuda, Tikva, Sarah, and all the others, happy anniversary. Tomorrow night, our final report on Israel's 30th year. Peace now, pride, people.
Roger Sharp has been giving you a very special look this week at the people of Israel, many of them survivors of Nazi atrocities. This evening, he has the conclusion of his special report, A Sharp Eye on Israel.
Joan, we wrap up our week of reports on Israel at 30 with a look at some average people, how they're coping, how they're living, what they're talking about. Besides inflation, the major internal issue in Israel today is reflected in the Hebrew words behind me, Shalom Akshab. It means peace now. More than pressure from President Carter, Prime Minister Begin is being pushed from within. 30,000 at this Peace Now rally in Tel Aviv, a movement similar to our own anti-Vietnam experience. Inspired by some highly decorated reserve military officers, the movement is gaining support, producing division throughout Israel. There's probably not a more politically aware people anywhere in the world, but debate is endless. It is said, find 3 Israelis and you have 4 opinions. Even within families, peace now is seen differently.
Even David is against that movement. But I think that even David would be willing, very willing, to give back all of most of the territories just in order to get peace. But he doesn't believe that's the way to get it, to get peace. I don't know. Somehow this movement gives me a bit hope, but I don't know whether it will help.
I don't think that is a problem of territory. Before 1967,
yes,
they have the territories. I don't think that is a problem of a few miles square. This is not the real problem. You believe that this is the real problem?
David Heifetz is a tourist guide, a 3rd-generation native Israeli. His wife, Marianne, immigrated from Holland. They have a 2.5-year-old son, Kafir. Their income a bit better than most, but they could be called a typical young, middle-class Israeli couple, agonizing, waiting for peace.
I don't think there's a day that goes by without a discussion like that. You live it.
In that atmosphere, how do you plan for the future?
Well, like David said, there isn't a choice. You must really believe that one day there will be peace. I am more pessimistic than he is. David is very sure, and that everything will turn out all right. But I'm very often quite afraid. And I think like most mothers will understand. I think, I don't care. Just let me get out and let my child be safe.
Coping with the inflated economy is another part of the struggle. A $10,000 Israeli income means taxes up to 65%. Food prices double. Wage increases aren't keeping pace.
New Yorkers complain all the time about rising prices, but our plight is nothing compared to the Israelis. A year ago, for example, an American dollar here was worth roughly 9 Israeli pounds. Today it takes 16 pounds to buy a buck. Israeli buying power cut nearly in half.
And now the Bank of Israel and the government treasury in revised projections for 1978 say by the end of the year the inflation rate will be 34 to 36%, with average prices 48% above last year's level. All this makes window shopping a popular pastime.
Everybody complains and everybody continues. There's no choice.
Is there anything particular that you work toward?